So the question I'm being asked, and I'm very grateful for CG Business Consulting to ask me to present this, is how is your safety culture, and can it actually support an ISO 45001 application? Or if you have 18001 at the moment, you have the 3-year period, I'm told, before you can think of migrating. And I was speaking to, without trying to name drop, yesterday the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health new president-elect, Mr. Dr. Vincent Ho, was visiting Dublin. And all the implications and all the indications are that 45001 is going to take off to new heights and will require some differences and some additional work from the traditional 18001. But the future is seemingly bright. If you're going to choose a management system for your companies, ISO 45001 seems to be the one that is very much on top of the pile at the moment. So the question is, can your safety culture support ISO 45000? I have 15 minutes to talk about this. I'll also leave 5 minutes for any questions that may or may not occur. So please shout out any questions if you wish, and I'll take you through my version of this. Now, having spoken to two of the individuals who were heavily involved in actually writing 45001 at a recent conference in London, the main thing that they're telling us is that the two things that they want to see different, the two things that they feel should be incorporated far more than they are at the moment, two of the main reasons why they want 45,000 to reflect safety culture, is that they want to see worker participation and senior management role in safety. Well-being, resilience and safe supply chain safety were important, but the two individuals I was talking to basically spent about 8 years writing 45001, said that they felt the big difference between this new management system and 18001 was a requirement for far more senior management and worker participation in the safety management. So that's what I'm basically going to concentrate on. And we're going to say, well, how can our safety culture improve, help, and aid any company who wishes to achieve a 45001 accreditation. And the things to consider, the things to look at very carefully are how you are going to have senior management and worker participation in your management systems. Those two issues came up very, very strongly with the people who wrote the management system. The one reason why I say that you can improve your safety culture by using risk assessment is because the entire reason for a management system is to identify and then manage your risks. If you can't identify the risks, then you cannot actually manage what you don't know. So once you've achieved the actual risk assessment, then you can then start looking at your safety culture to see how that can support your 45001. But having worked in the field of risk assessment for over 30 years, there are certain things that just by looking at your risk assessment, you will improve your safety culture, and particularly if your risk assessment involves, as is required by 45001, your top level management and your workers and your employees. Now, if I just briefly talk about risk assessment, which is the actual way that you identify hazards. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. You're all very good at doing it. But I would say that it is not easy to do. It's actually quite difficult. When we've done studies on it, when we've gone and looked at how people do their hazard identification risk assessment, we find that it's actually very difficult to do. You need a lot of tools, techniques, and people who know what they do and what they should do to identify your hazards. However, once you do it well, you do get very good results. And those results are there so that you can actually have a baseline, plans, objectives, and get your improvements in. And that is basically what safety culture is about, improving the way that you work there and making the place safer. Now there's a standard building, no different from many that you look at. It's actually probably quite a big building in terms of Irish standards, where over 90% of companies are going to actually have are going to have less than 10 employees. So that's quite a big building by Irish standards. But I'm using it just to say it doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter what type of building you're going to risk assess, it doesn't matter what type of organisation you have. You need to be able to get your workers involved to improve your culture, and here are some very specific ways of getting your workers to actually get involved in the risk management system of 45,000. I put this list down because I went through what can your actual workers, employees, staff, operatives, stakeholders, whatever you want to call them, what can they actually do that is going to allow an auditor to come in and say, yeah, this company has very good practices with regard to its workers. The one that I think you're far better off doing, the easiest one in terms of producing very good results, easily auditable, with lots of records that the auditors are going to see, is just make sure that your workers are involved in the hazard identification process. And you can do that on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, 6-monthly, biannually system. Now, the way I always say this to my students and also my clients is that risk assessment and hazard identification, you do it every single day. Some people can call it walk around, some people can call it an audit, some people will call it a safety check, a tour, whatever it is. But you will have individuals who walk around your building, your operations, your facilities. They will do it daily. Like, for example, you will have to have some situation whereby someone looks at your fire panel on a daily basis to check that it actually is operable and doesn't have a fault light. Someone's going to open your doors to let you in the building, and at that stage, hopefully they will check the rear exits as part of the fire escape. That's a daily check. Now, you can write that down, put it into a bit of software or your own Excel or Microsoft Office files. That's a daily check. Now, if you have individuals who actually do your daily tours and walk around and report that, that's actually part of your risk assessment. They're identifying hazards. So if you have security staff, if you have members of your catering staff, your office staff, they will be doing daily checks. So if you write that down, that is a perfect way of showing how you have involved your workers, your staff, your employees in the risk assessment process. And remember, this will be looked for in the 45,000. Weekly checks could be anything from fire alarm systems, checking fire doors, keep open, checking your desks, a cleared display, screen equipment monitor, anything like that. Again, someone will be doing that. If that's captured, if that's written down, and especially if you rotate the staff doing that, or if you have one individual doing it in one office room, another individual doing it in another area, or your security staff, your portering staff doing walkthroughs to check the building, locking up at night. There's your daily and weekly checks done. Monthly checks would be things like, let me think on monthly, doing a walkthrough to check the cleanliness, the hygiene, the housekeeping, especially on, I assume that a lot of people here would be from the construction industry. A lot of the monthly checks would involve your machinery, your heavy engineering, the statutory tests. Again, all of those, toolbox talks would be another one. All of those are examples where you can get your workers to put down their observations on documents or into your websites if you're web enabled, or into your Microsoft Office suite, and there is your risk assessment using your workers. And then yearly, you could have things like, on half yearly one, if you can get your workers involved in reviews and audits, you have a very good method of showing that you have involved your workers in risk assessment practice, and there should be no problem with showing how you involve your workers. Now, to do that, that would require all staff to be trained in risk assessment methods, and it's not particularly difficult. Just asking your staff to walk the building, checking anything is not untoward and all items are considered correct. That doesn't take much to train, and in the construction industry can be done through various toolbox talks. But there you have now trained your staff. Once you've trained your staff and they're all trained in that, you can then claim quite rightly that you have involved your workers in terms of the risk assessment. again, getting your shop floor employees, anything to do with your workers getting involved in the checks, the daily checks, the monthly checks, identifying hazards and writing down what they say, that will be taken as very good evidence of involving your shop floor and shop floor workers. Moving now to the senior staff. Another thing that was, I remember talking to the Deputy Chair of the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. One of the things that he was particularly concerned about was the lack of involvement by senior staff, whether it's the Chief Executive Officer, as it now is the favoured term, or whether it's senior leadership team members, or whether it's finance officers, HR officers, those high up the chain, those who visit the boardroom. 45,001 is going to ask for their involvement in safety. And there's no denying, there's no getting away from the fact that those individuals have to be brought into the system. And again, just like the workers, just like the individuals who are on the shop floor, you have to write down and you have to actually prove and evidence and give data to support the idea that your senior staff are involved. The ones I've seen quite a few senior executives working in is actually in construction, and I know, for example, a good method is CISC. I know that the CISC's project managers on each site are required to bring their staff in once a month and talk to them. I know that just under the project management on those sites, junior management staff are required to walk those sites and talk to their staff. Again, that's a way of involving senior staff and show any potential auditors that the senior staff are involved in the safety management system of the company. I know in CISCs, the overall head will also endeavour to visit every site monthly. And again, if you can log that in your daily visits and into the construction logbooks, that's a very good way of showing that you have senior management involvement. I don't think there's much of a better way than doing that. The other thing you could say is that they attended safety meetings, but to actually say that they leave their offices and go down to the actual sites and get involved in safety management, that's a very powerful piece of evidence to show that senior leaders are actually involved in safety management. Just on that, there was one example where senior management was shown not to have a very good effect. It was and you'll all know it, was the Macondo oil well blowout in 2011, Gulf of Mexico, 11 individuals perished, biggest environmental disaster of the century. 4 senior engineers came down doing exactly that. It was a senior management visibility tour, and they just wandered around the rig. But all they actually did was high-five all of the oil rig workers, and the chap who's supposed to actually monitor the well pressure, the chap whose job it was to make sure that the well didn't actually explode the 200 metres under the sea level, just basically gave a thumbs up to all 4 of these managers when they said, "Is everything okay, Raoul?" And Raoul just went, "No problem," rather than the senior manager actually getting in there, making sure that his actual visit was logged, written down, and even the questions that he asked. So that's one to remember. Make sure that your senior manager, when they come round, that they sit in, and that is actually minuted and put into your logs. I'm also told that 45,000 are going to heavily look at supply chains and have database of recent findings. But again, one of the things I did know is that they were looking for senior management and worker involvement. Now, I've only got a few minutes left. I'll go another few minutes. One thing that I do know is a big area that you can involve your frontline staff, your employees, is the whole issue of stress, bullying and harassment. These 3 issues, the elephant in the front room, as we call it, very little is they're not really discussed in as much detail as required. And certainly in the construction industry, stress, bullying and harassment are not certain things that are easily identified. But certainly they'll be looking for this. They will be saying, how do you deal with your stress? How do you identify it? How do you manage it? Same with bullying and harassment. Again, if you have your frontline workers If you have your employees saying, we have an issue with stress, we have an issue with bullying, we need a policy on it, but could you please come in and include it in your toolbox talks, or have the senior managers come in and talk about it? It does work well and will support your claims for the auditing for the 45,000. Wellbeing is coming online. It's rapidly improving. It will affect construction. The bigger companies are now taking it seriously. The smaller companies still need some help in the area, but again, it's something, if you get your frontline workers involved in, will be helpful. Someone said, what is safety culture? Now, just before we get mixed up on this, I'm not going to go too much into the definitions of safety culture. I like this one. What are the values of the organisation? The thing I like about this, and the big difference in safety culture, is that it is the value of the organisation and not the individual. And your safety culture can be positive or negative. 45,000 is going to be looking for whether or not your positive safety culture, you'll have expressed that by 18,001, but does your positive safety culture extend to your chief executives, your senior leadership team, and your frontline staff? So as much as you can, involve your top level management. I'm actually over time now. Whether it's a small building site, whether it's facilities management, whether it's specialised, that's a mechanical engineering workshop, you need to make sure that you get your senior managers and your frontline staff. And I'm going to leave it at that because I'm over time now. So thank you very much for that. Thank you indeed.